the millionaire breaks into a cold sweat after spotting the chauffeur's shocking tattoo. James Thornton sat back inside the sleek black limousine, the city's late afternoon chaos blurring past tinted windows. The streets of New York were alive, a riot of honking horns, distant sirens, and the steady murmur of people rushing by. Spring hung heavy in the air, a mix of warmth and tension that filled the city like electricity. For James, this ride was supposed to be routine, a calm moment before stepping into a big board meeting that could change everything. But then, something unexpected caught his eye. His new chauffeur, a quiet man James barely knew, adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. And there, just above the wrist, his breath caught. Sweat slicked on his palms, despite the cool air inside the car. The steady, confident mask he wore cracked in an instant. James's mind raced. What did this tattoo mean? Who was this man, really, sitting just feet away, steering his life through these crowded streets? The more he looked, the more questions swarmed his thoughts, questions he couldn't shake, no matter how much he tried. Was this man just a driver? Or something else entirely? The city hummed noisily around them, the chaotic beats mixing with the silent storm brewing inside James. The tattoo pulsed in his thoughts, like a secret signal only he seemed to recognize, dragging up uncomfortable memories he thought were long buried. His chest tightened. A wave of doubt crashed over him. This wasn't just about a driver anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and maybe even danger. The limousine glided forward, swallowing up the bustling streets. But inside James's head, the world spun faster. His sharp mind, usually so clear and calm, was tangled in a web of fear and uncertainty. His eyes flicked back to the tattoo again, catching every twisted line, every dark curve that seemed to whisper a warning. Then, without any sound or sign, the limo suddenly slowed, veering off the main road onto a dim side street. The headlights cut through a patch of shadow, and the city's familiar noise faded into an eerie hush. James's pulse hammered. The clutch of unease tightened around him like a noose. He swallowed hard. This wasn't the ordinary ride he'd planned. Something was coming. Something he couldn't predict. The tattoo remained, burning bright in his mind's eye, as if daring him to find the truth. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. ID. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The limo slid deeper into that shadowed side street, the city's pulse fading behind them, muffled and distant. James's throat tightened, a lump forming, twisting as the tattoo burned bright in his mind. His eyes locked on it again, the winding, strange symbol just above the driver's wrist. Then, the chauffeur's hand jerked violently. The wheel swerved hard. James jolted forward, a gasp ripping from his chest as the limo skidded across cracked asphalt. Tires screeched. Metal scraped against curbstones. The vehicle slammed into a rusted fire escape, the impact shaking the whole frame. Silence dropped suddenly. No honks, no sirens, just the echo of James's ragged breath against the cold glass. The chauffeur's head snapped toward James, eyes wild but dark. Not just ink. It seemed to pulse, writhing under the skin like living veins. The sharp lines stretched, twisted, turning into something monstrous, an eye, wide and black, staring right at him. James's chest tightened, breath caught, heart pounding through his ribs like a drum in a storm. "What? What are you?" His voice cracked, barely a whisper. The man's lips twitched into a slow, cruel smile. "Far from what you think, James." Shock smashed into James like a hammer. His mind scrambled. He'd hired a driver, a quiet man, nothing more. But this was no ordinary person behind the wheel. The tattoo, it wasn't a symbol, a code, or a mark of some club like he first thought. It was a sign of something old, something dangerous, something alive. The chauffeur's hand shot toward the console. James's eyes darted to the glove box swinging open, and a cold knife glinted against the dim light. "No!" James breathed, frozen in horror. But before he could move, the man reached out, and something slammed against the side of James's head. A sudden, sharp blow. Stars exploded behind his eyes. His knees buckled. Darkness curled at the edges of his vision. Then, the city's noises came rushing back. But not a limo anymore. James's head lolled sideways, and he saw it. A crowd gathering a few feet away. Faces twisted in shock and horror. Phones raised like weapons. The flashing red and blue of police cars blinking through night. The driver wasn't driving a limo anymore. It was a stolen car, controlled by someone else. Someone who'd just knocked James unconscious on the street, right outside his office building. And then, a woman's scream sliced through the growing chaos. James's eyes fluttered open, just enough to catch a glimpse of her. A young reporter, phone in hand, racing toward him. Her face was pale, but fierce. "Who did this? Who are you?" she shouted, voice shaking. The man tried to slip away, but the tattoo bled visible down his arm like black wildfire under the skin, now fully alive, glistening. James's chest hammered as questions flooded him, drowning every thought. Was this stranger working against him, or for him? Was that tattoo a warning, or a curse? And most terrifying of all, what had James truly stepped into? Because this ride, this man, it wasn't the calm before the storm. It was the storm itself. The crowd murmured with fear, voices rising. Is that him, the millionaire? What's going on here? Who's that man with the tattoo? James tried to speak, but the words lodged in his throat. Heavy, unknown. He had no idea what this meant. But one thing was clear. Everything he thought he knew was about to shatter. James's eyes fluttered open, the crowd blurring around him. The woman's voice, cut through the noise, sharp and urgent. "Who did this? Who are you?" She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to check for a pulse. But before James could answer, the wild-eyed man with the living tattoo twisted away, slipping through the gathering crowd like a shadow moving against the light. The black symbol pulsed down his arm, dark veins spreading, as if burning his skin from inside. "Get back! Stay clear!" someone shouted. The crowd recoiled, whispering, pointing, wide-eyed, unsure if this was madness or something worse. Sirens wailed in the distance, the red lights growing closer. James's throat was dry, heart hammering like a runaway train. He wanted to cry out, to ask the woman who'd saved him why this nightmare was happening. But his words caught in his throat. Suddenly, a sharp, metallic click split the air. Heads snapped toward the street's other end, where a sleek black car idled silently, its engine off, but its presence loud. The chauffeur, the same man whose tattoo had first shattered James's calm, was standing there, calm and collected now, hands raised but empty. Only it wasn't just him. Two more men stepped out from the shadows behind the car. Both wore dark suits, faces masked. Their eyes were cold, calculating. But what froze James's blood wasn't their menace. It was what one of them held, a smart tablet, screen glowing red with a live video feed of James himself. And then the impossible happened. The man closest to James, his supposed savior, the fierce reporter, stood up, her face suddenly shifting. The pale skin seemed almost unreal, the sharp eyes gleaming with something unreadable. "What's going on here?" she said calmly. "You don't remember, do you, James?" The words hit him like a punch. Confused, weak, he tried to focus, but the world tilted. "She's not a stranger," the man with the tattoo said smoothly, stepping forward. The black symbol visibly shrank back under his skin, like it was hiding. "You know her better than anyone." James's mind scrambled, torn in 1,000 directions. He shuffled backward, trying to escape the sudden collapse of everything he thought was real. "No," he whispered. "You're lying." The woman, no, not a woman, smiled, slow and cold. "Remember Project Helix," she said. James blinked, heart jerking violently. "You're real. Job," she added. "This wasn't just a meeting today." The crowd went silent. Sirens grew louder. The tattooed chauffeur nodded. "You're not just a millionaire, James. You were one of us, until you erased yourself." 1,000 images crashed into James's head. Faces he'd forgotten. Names buried deep. A life he'd spent years trying to forget. The tattoo wasn't a curse. It was a mark of a group, a secret, of a man who faked his own past. The limo, the city, the attack, they were just the beginning. The woman's eyes locked on his. "Welcome back." Pain exploded in his chest. His hands trembled. The truth? It was a trap. And now James wasn't sure who the real enemy was. The man who tried to kill him, or the part of himself he tried so hard to destroy. The crowd murmured, faces twisting. Someone gasped, "Is he some kind of spy, or worse?" James's breath hitched. The tattoo glowed faintly inside his mind, the mark of a life that refused to stay buried. Everything had changed, and the storm was just starting to roar. James's breath hitched as the tattoo's faint glow flickered in his mind. The crowd's voices blurred together, a strange background hum that didn't quite feel real anymore. The woman's cold smile lingered, her eyes sharp and unreadable, like she held a secret that would shred James to pieces once revealed. His head throbbed, each beat a hammer, slamming inside his skull. Then a sudden crack split the air. A gunshot. The crowd froze. Mouths fell open. Phones slipped from hands. Screams ripped out, but died fast as chaos snapped, tight like a trap. James's eyes snapped up to the woman's face. Her smile vanished in a blink. She dropped to the ground, clutching her leg where dark blood blossomed, soaking the pavement. The reporter wasn't supposed to get hurt. She was their anchor, a guide through this storm. But now she was just broken. "Get down!" shouted a voice. A hard, authoritative command. Foreign voice, piercing through the panic. The man with the tattoo dove toward her, his wild eyes wide with something raw and urgent. His black symbol writhed, seething under his skin like a living flame. But James felt a twist of confusion not inside him. The man wasn't trying to escape anymore. Not really. He screamed, low and desperate. "No, stay with me." Everything slowed. Then the impossible happened. The tablet's screen went dark, and suddenly a second James appeared in the midst of the crowd. Confused? So was James. This James, same sharp suit, same tense jaw, stepped forward. Calm, controlled, no fear in his eyes. He looked exactly like him. But that wasn't possible. The crowd gasped as whispers exploded. "Is that a twin? No way, biomimicry? A clone?" James's chest tightened so hard it felt like it might snap. His heart hammered wildly. The second James reached into a jacket pocket and pulled out a thin device, flipping it open fast. A flashing red light illuminated his face, and in one swift moment, worlds shifted. "Drop your weapons. This is a containment breach." The words hit like a slap. "Containment breach?" Second James's voice was calm, cold, like he belonged somewhere else, far away from this street, these people, this mess. And then, without warning, the first James's wild-eyed chauffeur grabbed a strange device from nowhere, pressing it hard against his tattoo. The ink flared, black flames licking up his arm, then exploded outward in a dark wave that knocked the crowd back as if a force had slammed into them. Confusion shattered into panic. Sirens wailed. Police rushed forward, but paused, frozen, faces blanching as the air thickened with something heavy and sharp. The tattoo's living fire spread, twisting the shadows. Then the second James spoke again, voice steady. "My name's James. Not that you can trust me, but you need to listen." The first James blinked, his blurry mind trying to catch up, shaken beyond words. Project Helix wasn't just a secret, the second James said. It was an experiment, not on bodies, but on memories, identities. We're not one person. We're fragments, poppies. James's hands trembled violently. "Copies? What are you saying? I'm not me?" The second James's eyes darkened. "You erased yourself, but your past, your life, it's layered. We're versions of the same man, tangled in a lie bigger than either of us." The first James swallowed hard, gasping as the living tattoo on the chauffeur twisted wildly, more like a warning now. "Then who am I?" James whispered. His voice broke, raw with fear. Suddenly, the police edged closer, weapons raised, eyes flickering between the two Jameses and the tattooed man who'd fallen quiet, drained, watching both versions of the millionaire with something almost regretful in his wild gaze. The crowd held its breath. A reporter shouted a question, but it caught in her throat. And above it all, the stolen car, the limelight of this nightmare, sat silent, a steel ghost waiting for the storm to break again. Two men named James, one man marked by a living tattoo, a woman bleeding on the asphalt, and the city held a secret that was no longer just about a driver or a millionaire. It was about who James really was, and worse, what he never wanted to remember. The air crackled. The nightmare was only just beginning. Who is the real James? And which version stands between the city and a silence darker than any tattoo could hold? The tattoo throbbed in the silence, a dark pulse beneath the skin of the wild-eyed man, still watching both Jameses with sharp, haunted eyes. The air hung heavy, breath caught, muscles tensed, like the moment after a scream before the noise floods in. Sirens were closer now, flashing red and blue, bleeding into the dark street. The crowd pressed back, whispers rising, faces pale with shock, some terrified, others wide-eyed with morbid curiosity. James's chest felt like it was being crushed in a vice. His hands shook, his throat tightened so much it was hard to breathe. Two versions of himself, one marked by secrets he couldn't reach, the other the living ghost of a life he'd fled. And that tattooed chauffeur, the wild card. Then, suddenly, a sharp crack split the air again, louder, closer, a burst of movement. One of the masked men stepped forward, pulling out a sleek device, pointing it like a weapon. The crowd gasped and dove to the sidewalk, screaming as the man spoke. This man," he gestured to the wild-eyed driver, "is a high-level threat linked to Project Helix." James opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. The driver snarled, the tattoo flaring like wildfire, black flames licking up his arm. Then came the blast. No, not a gunshot. A whisper. A voice so clear, it cut through the chaos like a blade. "James, Head snapped toward the voice. It was soft, yet impossible to ignore. Gentle, but laced with steel. Familiar, so familiar, it stuck like a ghost on James's skin. He looked up, eyes wide, heart hammering. Standing just at the edge of the streetlight, framed by shadows but impossible to miss, was a woman. Not the reporter, not the pale stranger. This was someone else. Her eyes burned with burning intensity. She stepped forward, and the crowd seemed to hold its breath. "James," she said again. The words pulled memories from dark corners, memories James didn't know he still remembered. A face from the past, sharper and crueler than any scar the tattoo could leave. "No, it can't be," James whispered, numb confusion washing over him as his chest seized. She's dead." The wild-eyed man flinched, tattoo twisting frantic, as if sensing the shift. The second James blinked, cool and calm, watching the woman like calculating prey. The woman moved closer, slow and deliberate. The streetlights flickered, as if the city itself hesitated. "Did you think you could erase me?" Her voice cracked, thick with hatred. "Your first real job, your first real betrayal." James's knees buckled, heart twisting painfully in his chest. The crowd watched in stunned silence, the city holding itself hostage in the moment. "No," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "But yes," she said, eyes hard as flint. "This isn't just about copies or erased memories." She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of James's face like a sentence unfinished. "I'm your nightmare. The part of you buried deep. The truth you refuse to see." The tattoo on the driver surged violently, black veins writhing like living fire. "I died because of you," she said, voice trembling with rage and something rawer, pain. "And I've come back to finish what was started." James's vision blurred. The lines between who he was and what he'd done shattered and crumbled away. The city streets seemed to tilt, the crowd trembling, as if sensing the collapse of everything solid. The second James stepped forward, arms open, calm like the eye in the storm. "It's not what you think." But the woman cut him off with a smile so cold, it cracked the night. "No, it's worse." A sudden flash, metal glinting in her hand. A gun. One shot fired, sharp and final. The driver lunged forward, tattoo exploding in a storm of black flames. Then, the bullet hit him, not James. The wild-eyed chauffeur stumbled, chest heaving, eyes wild like a cornered animal. His skin rippled, the tattoo burning brighter, brighter. And then, the impossible. The tattoo jumped from his arm, forming thick, dark lines that slithered like ink spilled on skin, until it reached James. A searing heat, raw and alive, slammed into James's chest. His mind cracked open, memories rushing back in agonizing, shattered bursts. Faces he'd forgotten, lives he never knew he'd lived. The woman watched, eyes fierce as James gasped, collapsing to his knees. "That tattoo," she hissed, "is not a mark. It's a parasite, feeding on what you hide." The crowd was silent. Even the night held its breath. James looked up, tears streaking down pale cheeks. "Who am I, really?" His voice broke, trembling with terror and shattered hope. The woman smiled, small, painful, victorious. "You're not James." She knelt beside him, voice dropping low, heavy with truth no one was ready for. "You're all of them." The city seemed to darken further, shadows wrapping tighter, and somewhere deep in James's broken mind, a single thought screamed, "I don't exist." The nightmare was only beginning, and the real question hung in the cold spring air. If James isn't James, then who is? The air hung heavy, thick with silence and questions nobody dared voice. James knelt on the cracked pavement, chest heaving, the fire of that living tattoo now searing deep inside him. His hands shook uncontrollably. The woman's cold smile stayed burned in his mind, a victory carved from pain. "You're not James," she repeated, leaning close. Her breath was sharp, bitter. "You're all of them." Then a sound. A sharp, metallic click, low and sudden. The crowd's murmur snapped into terrified silence. Heads whipped around, eyes wide and frantic. From the shadows stepped a man. Not one of the masked enforcers, not the chaotic driver, not the second James standing calm a few feet away. A man with gray eyes, steady and sharp, his face weathered by years and secrets. He looked right at James, as if seeing through every layer, every lie. "I think it's time you knew the truth," the man said, voice rough but sure. James blinked, confused, numb. The woman's eyes narrowed, the tattooed driver tensed, black flames flickering like a warning. "Who the hell are you?" the second James demanded, stepping forward, his calm slipping for the first time. The gray-eyed man took a slow breath and stepped fully into the light. "I'm you," he said, then paused. "At least, the original you. The James before any of this hell began." The crowd gasped. Phones rose, glare of red and blue sirens casting ever-shifting shadows. James's chest clenched tighter than before. His mind raced, screaming for meaning. The woman hissed, "That's impossible." But the gray-eyed man ignored her and reached into his coat. He pulled out a small device, sleek and black, flipped it open. A hologram flickered, popping into the air above his palm. Faces swirled. Dates ran fast. Project Helix. The words burned in clear letters. "But more than that," he said steady. "This whole mess, the tattoo, the doubles, none of it's real." James's breath hitched. The driver's tattoo flared violently, black flame spreading like poison. "No," the gray-eyed man said, voice low but unstoppable. "This is all a system, a program. You're not a man trapped by secrets. You're code." The crowd gasped. A woman screamed. James's knees buckled. His hands clawed the ground. You're an experiment inside a virtual world, a memory loop. The copies, the tattoo, they're glitches, fragments fighting to stay alive. Lies. The woman snapped, drawing her gun again. You're puppeteering us. Before she could finish, the driver's tattoo exploded in a wave of black fire. The blast hit the gray-eyed man dead center. But instead of pain, his form rippled, breaking apart like pixels dissolving. Then, silence. The scene flickered. James's vision blurred, then snapped sharp again. Only now, it wasn't the noisy street anymore. It was something else. White. Blinking machines. Tubes. Screens. James's breath came in sharp gasps. He was lying on a cold metal table, wires snaking down his arms, his chest rising with panic. A voice echoed close, gentle but cold. "You're still in the pod," it said. James's head turned slowly. A woman stood there, older, softer, eyes full of tired care. "Wake up, James," she whispered. His mind screamed, Where am I? What happened?" "You never left," she said. This was the real nightmare. James's hands trembled, sliding off the table. He looked at his arm. No tattoo, no flames, just pale skin, smooth and empty. Who are you?" "Who am I, then?" he asked, voice shaking hard. The woman reached out, fingertips brushing his cheek. "Not who, James. What?" The machines around him beeped softly. "You're the virus, inside the system, the glitch trying to break free, the shadow chasing memories that were never yours." James's world shattered again. His past, the doubles, the tattooed driver, the bleeding woman, the second James. Maybe none of it was real. Or maybe they were all pieces of him. But the question burned hotter than ever. If he was just a program, a memory, a virus, then what was hunting him? And who was really pulling the strings? His breath hitched, because this time the nightmare wasn't outside. It was deep inside, and the screen in front of him flickered, revealing a single message: system failure imminent. James's heart thundered. The countdown had begun, and everything he thought he knew was dead. The real storm was only just waking up. The screen blinked twice. The cold white lights hummed low and steady. James's breath, those words felt like a hammer crashing down inside his chest. His hands shook. His mind spun. Then the room shifted, slowly, like the walls were melting, colors bleeding into each other. The machines, the screens, the woman's tired eyes, they all warped. And suddenly, James wasn't alone. Behind the white glow, shadows stirred. A figure stepped forward. Not the gray-eyed man, not the woman who'd whispered his name, but someone else entirely. A tall man, face hidden beneath a black hood. His voice cut through the sterile air like a knife. "James, you've been lied to!" The words slammed into James like a punch. The hooded man reached into his cloak, pulling out a small, rectangular device. He pressed it against James's temple. James froze. Panic screamed in his chest. "Wait! Don't!" His voice cracked. The man ignored it. A flash of light, sharp and blinding. Suddenly, James's world exploded. Colors shattered. Pain ripped through his skull, raw, electric, unbearable. He fell back onto the cold metal table, gasping like he'd drowned. And then, silence. The machines stopped. The beeping faded. No white room, no wires, only darkness. James's eyes strained to focus. Slowly, shapes emerged, blurry, shifting. Voices whispered, soft, urgent. "James, listen." His head throbbed. His mouth barely moved. "I'm not real?" he croaked. A chorus of voices overlapping. "No," one voice said, dark, calm. "You are real." "But a creation," another added, desperate, a prisoner. Then the hooded man's voice returned, colder, sharper. "Your memories are fabrications, layers of code built to contain a threat." James's chest slammed tight. Fear strangled his breath. "Threat?" he whispered. "Not you," the voice said. "Them." And then a sudden shudder passed through James. Pain flared in his chest, not from machines, but somewhere inside. His breath hitched as the truth hit him like ice water. The tattoo, the doubles, the woman, the driver, all lies, fragments of a system designed to hold something else, something buried, something alive. "Open your eyes," the hooded man ordered. James forced his lids apart. Gone was the cold white room. Instead, he found himself lying on a cracked concrete floor. A shattered mirror leaned against a wall, and in the shards, countless reflections stared back at him. Not one James, dozens, each face twisted, distorted, each version of him screaming silently. And in the center, a dark shape bled ink like shadows, a monstrous eye, familiar and terrible. James's chest heaved. Fury, horror, despair crushed him at once. Who are you?" he gasped, vision blurring. The hooded man stepped aside. From the shadows emerged a woman. Not the reporter, not the pale stranger, but someone he knew. Her smile, slow, cruel, knowing. "You never wanted to see me, James," she said softly. "My name is Evelyn." His heart stopped. "I'm not your enemy," she whispered, "but the truth you can't run from." James shook, breath heavy, hands trembling. "Evelyn?" he choked. "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "Your anchor, your torment, your beginning." Behind her, the door to the room slammed open. 100 screens flickered alive. Faces appeared. Doctors, scientists, faces from Project Helix. And then, the ultimate, brutal revelation. They weren't watching him. They were watching a simulation. James's world wasn't inside a pod. It never had been. It was a test. And he was not a man. He was the project, the virus, the weapon, the variable. A trap to see if a mind could break, fracture again, and still survive. The room darkened, and somewhere deep inside, James screamed without sound. Because now he knew. His nightmare wasn't just beginning. It had never ended. The countdown kept ticking, and the question burned brutal and raw. If James was a project, a code, a shadow trapped in endless loops, then who had built the monster inside the tattoo? And what were they waiting for? The silence swallowed him whole. Only the cold blinking of the final warning remained. System failure imminent. And somewhere far beyond that, a voice whispered, "Ready to reset?" The screen flickered one last time. System failure imminent. The cold glow dimmed. Then everything went black. James's breath hitched, ragged and raw. His body felt empty, hollow, as if he'd been drained dry and left raw inside a shell. But the darkness didn't last. It cracked open, and with a sharp burst, light flooded in, blinding white. Blinding white. He blinked, mouth dry as dust, heart drumming wild despite the quiet. Slowly, the silhouette of a room took shape. Except it wasn't the sterile white pod he'd just been in. No machines humming, no wires running. Instead, he was sprawled on a cold stone floor, rough against his skin. A dim flicker of candlelight cast shadows across the walls. Walls thick with old bricks, damp from forgotten rain. The air smelled of smoke and wet earth. James's head snapped to the side. The same woman from before stood nearby, but she wasn't the sharp, cruel Evelyn. No, this was different. Softer. Her tired eyes met his, but there was no hate there, only quiet fear. "James," she whispered, "wake up." His hands trembled, claws scraping the stone as he pushed himself up. Around them, faint noises stirred, footsteps, whispers. A door creaked open further down the hall. Slow, careful. Then a voice broke the silence, low and trembling, but familiar. "James, can you hear me?" It was the wild-eyed driver. His tattoo was gone. No black flames. Just a plain, human face, etched by exhaustion. James's throat tightened. Before he could speak, the woman reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Listen carefully," she said, eyes darting to the shadows that moved beyond the candlelight. "None of this is what you've been told." James's pulse hammered. "Then what is it?" he croaked, voice cracking. She swallowed hard. "Project Helix. It never existed." Silence slammed into the room. James's mind spun. "What?" His breath hitched. She shook her head slowly. "The system. The doubles. The tattoo. Lies. Smoke and mirrors." The door groaned open wider. A figure stepped inside. Not the gray-eyed man. Not the hooded stranger. A young woman, eyes wide with terror. "James," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's me, your sister." James blinked, stunned, speechless. "Your whole life, it was built to keep you here, to keep us here." Heart pounding, James took a shaky breath. "My sister?" "Yes." She knelt beside him. "And I'm real." Tears soaked her face as she pulled something from her shirt. A small, cracked mirror. Looking into it, James saw their reflections. But behind their faces, bright and shaken, a jagged crack tore through the glass. And inside the fracture, the dark, writhing tattoo. It moved, alive. Then the sister's voice cracked. "They made us pieces, fragments, trapped in a loop. Locked inside this trap called life." James' hands shook harder, his chest tightening. Why me? Why us?" Before she could answer, the candles flickered violently. A shadow surged from the deepest corner of the room. A tall, impossible figure. Darkness folded and pressed against the walls, distorting everything. And then, with a voice like steel grinding bones, "You don't belong here." Silence exploded. The sister screamed, pushing James behind her as the shadow lunged. James's heart slammed as the form stepped forward. Then the madness struck. The shadow peeled back its face, and beneath, not a stranger, not a monster, but his own, another James. Only this one, grinning wide, cold, void of all light. The last breath escaped James's lips, and the room plunged into a silence darker than any tattoo. The sister whispered, ragged, "He's the real virus." James's body froze, his mind shattered. The nightmare was inside him. The truth wasn't outside. It had always been within. And with that, the candle flickered once, twice, and died. Only one question tore through the thick black. Who is the real James? And more importantly, which one is still alive? The candle guttered and died. Darkness crashed down like a wave, swallowing the room whole. James's breath hitched, raw and ragged. His body froze. The icy grip of fear squeezed his chest tight, squeezing out every ounce of hope. His sister's voice trembled, soft and broken. "He's the real virus." A slow, bitter laugh crawled up from somewhere deep inside James. "What if I don't want to be saved?" His voice cracked. The shadows shifted. Cold fingers brushed his skin as the room seemed to twist. The cracked mirror on the floor glimmered one last time, then shattered into 1,000 pieces. And then the ground beneath them cracked wide. A terrible sound, like metal crunching bone. James stumbled back. His sister grabbed his arm, pulling him away. Before either of them could react, the floor gave way entirely. They fell. Endless falling. Blackness. Time broke apart, seconds stretching out like hours. Then a jarring thud. James blinked. He wasn't alone anymore. A dozen strangers knelt around him, faces pale in the dim light of a massive underground chamber. Flickering monitors lined the walls, casting strange glows. Machines hummed. Screens blinked erratic codes. His sister's eyes went wide. "We're inside," she whispered, fear bright there. "Not just trapped, programmed." James's heart slammed. His lungs burned. A voice echoed, brittle and cold, from somewhere deep in the cavern. "Welcome back, James." Heads whipped toward the shadowy figure stepping forward. Not the driver, not Evelyn, not either James. A woman stood there, tall, harsh, with steel eyes that cut sharper than any blade. She smiled, slow, cruel, and then the revelation struck like lightning. She held up a tablet. On it, a live feed. A room filled with familiar faces. Scientists, men in suits, faces from everything James thought he knew. But that wasn't it. In the center of the footage, him. Not just one James, hundreds of them. Tangled webs of broken men and women, all versions of James, trapped inside endless virtual cages. The woman's voice sliced through the silence. "You're not the first." Her smile widened, cruel, and unmasked. "You're the experiment within experiments. The failure of 1,000 others." James's breath caught, choking on shock. "What do you mean?" His voice was raw, desperate. She stepped closer, light flickering off her cold skin. "The tattoo was never on the driver. It was on you, the real you, marking the corrupt core." She pointed at the shattered mirror. "The part of your mind you buried in lies, but never escaped." The chamber's lights flickered. Screens whispered. "And now," she said, voice lowering, "you're about to be deleted." James's sister screamed. "No, you can't!" But before she could finish, a sharp clang echoed. The woman vanished. Silence flickered. James tried to stand. His knees buckled. Then, a new sound. A slow, grinding crack. The walls began to close in. Panicked murmurs rippled through the strangers around him. James gasped, hand trembling as he looked down. The tattoo, the living one, burned beneath his skin. And suddenly, he wasn't James at all. Not in any version he'd imagined. Because as the chamber shrank, the truth crashed through like concrete breaking glass. He was the prisoner. The virus wasn't outside. It was inside. And worse, the real question buried deep and raw between gasps. Who is hunting whom? And if James wasn't just a man, but the trap itself, what did freedom even look like? The walls pressed tighter. The tattoo flared, alive, burning. And the nightmare whispered, "Reset initiated." Everything split. Everything ended. And with a final scream, swallowed whole, the story started again. The chamber shuddered. Walls closing in fast, crushing the air. James gasped, chest tight like a vice, squeezing every breath out. The tattoo burned under his skin, dark, alive, a poison spreading. His sister grabbed his arm, eyes wild with fear. "Hold on," she whispered, voice breaking. The shadow lurched closer, cold, heavy, unstoppable. James stumbled, heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. Then a sudden roar tore through the room. The tattoo flared, but this time James pushed back. Light exploded. A blast of white fire cut through the darkness, blasting the shadow back like it was made of dust. The walls shook. The air cracked. James's breath came fast and jagged. The tattoo pulsed. But now it felt different. Not a curse, not a trap, but a weapon. A spark. His sister's hand squeezed his. "You did it." Relief broke through her fear, just for a second. From the darkness stepped the gray-eyed man, the original James, calm but worn. "It's over," he said, voice steady. "You fought the virus inside. You broke the cycle." James looked down at his arm. The tattoo writhed once, then faded. The ink melted into his skin, leaving only a faint shadow. His hands trembled, exhausted but free. Around them, the chamber hummed lower, the crushing walls retreating. The monitors dimmed. The endless loop cracked open. Outside, the distant sound of sirens grew closer, real and alive. Not part of the simulation, not fake. James blinked, heart pounding. "What now?" His sister smiled, tears shining. "We find out who's left, who's really alive." A rush of whispers rose among the strangers. Faces softened. Hope flickered. But then, far above, the chamber's ceiling cracked. A single, slow drip of black ink fell. The dark tattoo's eye reopened, glaring. The nightmare hadn't vanished. It was waiting. James's chest tightened, breath hitching. Somewhere deep, a voice echoed, soft, dangerous. Not finished yet. He looked at his sister, at the gray-eyed man, and at the fading mark beneath his skin. He wasn't the same James anymore. He might never be. But he was still here. Still fighting, still alive, and that was enough. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss what happens next. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button right now and help this story blow up. Flood the comments with your thoughts, your theories about the ending. Let's hear it all. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how it ends. Only true fans get how important it is to stand with the channel, so prove you're one of them.